In this video, we continue our conversation with Gene Billingsley of GMT in discussing the games that helped to build the company it is today. Here, we will focus on the games released between 2014 and 2018 on Legendary Tactics.
Fast forward to 2014. One of our top 20 bestsellers is a game called Thunder Alley. I told you last time that there were a couple of games where a designer had really creatively taken the CDG system and done something else with it besides area control. So Mark Herman with Empire of the Sun, for sure. That thing's a classic. Chad Jensen with Combat Commander, man, so much admiration. But what Jeff and Carla Horger did with Thunder Alley is they made a card-driven racing game. I wouldn't have even thought that was possible, but it's really fun. And clearly a ton of people love to play it. And sadly, Carla passed earlier this year.
Oh, I
Um,
didn't know that. Oh.
yeah, it was a rough start of the year for us
Hmm.
with Alan Emmerich and Carla Horger and Roger McGowan all passing, like within 3 months. So we definitely miss all of them and we miss Carla. But this game for us, not only, I mean, think about it. How many people thought of GMT as a racing game company before that? Like zero, right? Um, but we had serious people playing this who were racing fans. And they're like, oh, this is great. And so it spawned a game called Grand Prix, which tries to do the same thing with Formula One, still a card-driven game. And each of those had some expansion packs. And then we spawned this Mad Max type of, Apocalypse Road, which is a crazy game where you're racing and you're getting shot at, and it's crazy fun. And so this has created a whole um, strategy game line, a little lighthearted. I mean, you could, but definitely strategy based, right? So, but it's not. It's fun to be at a convention and sit down with a half dozen guys and just say, "Ah, let's play." Let's play Apocalypse Road and just destroy each other. And so I like these multiplayer games, and that's really the first multiplayer CDG in that genre that I know of. I mean, we had multiplayer CDGs with, Here I Stand, but to take that to racing, that was new for me. And I thought, I love it when we do things that are innovative for the hobby, not because it makes GMT look great, although sometimes it does, but because it helps the hobby. It advances the hobby. We learn that we can do new things, and that brings us new ways to enjoy our games. So really thankful for Jeff and Carla Horger and and bringing us, you know, such a cool game as Thunder Alley. 2014, probably my favorite GMT game. I I don't say this very often because I don't like to play favorites with our designers or whatever, but I just gotta say, Fire in the Lake is my favorite GMT game. Now, it's not my favorite one to play with my kids or my family or certain groups. It's deep and it's long, but it's Vietnam. And it's Vietnam like nobody's done it. So, and it's Voco and Mark. So when we brought that out in 2014, and I told the story about that last time, so I'm not going to waste our viewers' time. You guys can go back and look at the second tape if you want to see that one or hear about that one. It's our number 8 all-time bestseller, won some awards, has spawned 3 other products in the just in the Fire in the Lake mini line of the coin series, and inspired a bunch of designers to do other things with coin. Because this was like, how big and complex and innovative could coin get? And if you'd had anybody but Mark and Voco working on it, I think it might have been too much. But they just managed to make it elegant. So that's the one I would play it solitaire. I do. I play it solitaire. I play it with other people. I would play it anytime, anywhere with anybody. It's just fun. So that was really the big game that we did in 2014. 2015, I'm looking over here at my notes because I took a few because honestly, 500 games, I don't remember like what year most of them were done in, nor does it, I guess, really matter. Um, but 2015 was a good year for us. Churchill by Mark Herman. It's our number 17 bestseller. Here's another place where I feel like we were really innovative. This was an innovation in the hobby. Having a three-player game where you're fighting over issues, but then there's a board where the war advances or not based on the issues. It's just really smart. It's typical Mark Herman. There are more in the series. I would really encourage you to check them out. Versailles is awesome. Um, Heracles, really fun. And it's got that two on two or but you got to do better than your partner, sort of dynamic with it. So again, a benefit for the hobby, really almost more than a benefit for GMT. Here's a new way to enjoy historical strategy board games. And, as so many times we've done, we thank Mark Herman for that. The second game we did in 2015, which built us, is believe it or not, up to that time, GMT didn't have a strategic US Civil War game. And if you know me, you would say that's a really huge oversight because Gene loves those kind of games. And, I grew up playing Victory's Civil War, that Eric Lee Smith did. And I thought I'd never find a game that I liked better than that one, a Civil War game. And then I did. Mark Simonich created one in 2015 called the US Civil War. Super fun, not that hard to get into. If you don't like American Civil War strategy games, well, it wouldn't matter. But it built us because it brought some of those players in. And it's one more way that Mark Simonich contributed to GMT. In so many ways, Mark Simonich has been an MVP, for our company over many years, not just with his art skills and his art developer or his art director skills, but as a designer. He's done a dozen games plus for us across, people think of his Hex Encounter World War II games, but also this one. I mean, do you think about that one when you think about Mark Simonich? Civil War players do. What about Caesar, Rome versus Gaul? That's to me a huge game. What about Successors? I know they did another license with a European company, but the version he did for us was really super good. That's a great game. So anytime Mark calls me and says, Gene, I've got a game, I really don't even care what it's about. If Mark is passionate about it and he took the time to give it the Mark Simonich treatment, it's probably going to make a lot of our customers happy. So that was the other game in 2015, U.S. Civil War by Mark Simonich. In 2016, there's a game that stood out to me as building GMT, even though it wasn't the first game in a series. In 2016, we published Liberty or Death. It was the fourth game in the Coin series. And it's one of our top 30 bestsellers, which, now we're getting further along in time. It's harder to get into that bestseller list, based on 10 years of sales, based on 35 years of sales. You got to do a lot better to get up in that list. So this game has done well, Liberty or Death. It's sold well for us. But to me, the biggest thing it did is it brought us Harold Buchanan. And Harold's become a good friend. I have tons of respect for him as a designer, as just a person, as our raising our families kind of paralleled. We've talked about that and how our philosophies about kids and we're very similar. And now we're being grandparents at the same time and finding that our grandparent experience is very similar as well. And so we kind of had a lot of some conversations about that, just encouraging each other and picking each other up. So, from what I said in the first two videos, that it's the personal thing that really matters to me. It's building the friendships over time. So I met Harold. I had heard about his game, Liberty or Death, which is cool because it takes coin to the American Revolution. And to me, at least, the American Revolution is super interesting. Apologies to my British friends out there, but you know, um, the yeah, I was going to taunt them, but I decided not to. Um, we like you. Please keep buying our games. Sorry we won that war. Um, I'm in trouble now, aren't
Maybe.
I? So Harold brought coin, and I heard it was a good game, but I had some questions because I heard that the Indians, the Native Americans, were a side. Well, I mean, I know my coin games, and that just didn't make a lot of sense to me. So I'm at Consum World Expo, and so was Harold, and so I think it was Jason Carr who, maybe it wasn't Jason Carr, it was somebody else arranged for me to sit down and talk to Harold. And I sat down and started asking him questions. Just, I mean, I said hi, but not really a whole bunch after that. I was just asking him questions. And I wanted to know why he did certain things with the game. I don't think it was an inquisition, but I think Harold was a little bit like, what the heck? You know, at the start of that. And so we began to talk, and, you know, he's another, super smart guy, super accomplished guy. Um, I got to tell you, sometimes there's like a real downside to somebody. The only real downside to Harold is he loves Ohio State football. And there's just something wrong with that. I'm sorry. And now all the guys who are in Columbus at that marvelous game group are going to go no more GMT games because Gene's dissing Ohio State football. Anyway, Harold is a huge Ohio State fan, and I'm a huge Oklahoma Sooner fan. So how we're friends, I'm not sure. Um, but it tells you something about the kind of person he is. And I'm 100% kidding about all that. Um, Harold's a really smart designer. You can see it in the craft that and the attention he paid to Liberty or Death. You can see it in a little game he did a few years later. He called me in one day. I was in Las Vegas. For some reason, I remember that. And he said, "Hey, Gene, I'm stuck." He was working on another big game. And he goes, "What should I do?" And I said, "Make a game just for fun that you don't even ever intend to publish. Just go make a game as a thought exercise." And so he did. And it was so good that we decided to publish it. And and it's a really tight little CDG. So he creates Flashpoint South China Sea. And it's one of these smaller games, like Mark Herman's Fort Sumter or Fred Serval's Red Flag over Paris. And a lot of times there's a trade-off. When you go smaller, there just aren't as many interesting decision points. And the game can get like off center really easily based on just a card or two when there aren't as many cards, right? That's just the math of it. Harold did a marvelous job with Flashpoint South China Sea of just bringing us this game that's going to be different every time you play, and it's going to be close probably every time you play. And I think it's super great. Um, we sold out one, and we're having trouble with the second one on P500. I don't know why, because I think it's really fun. But I'm super happy to have Harold not only be part of our group of designers, but Harold's doing a lot of really good things for our hobby too, in terms of supporting and helping and highlighting a bunch of different designers and developers and content creators in the hobby. And with his SD, his con group, putting on events where we can all get to know each other and enjoy our hobby more. So really, really thankful for the day that I met Harold Buchanan, and so happy that he's part of our team. And that all started with Liberty or Death. So I'm going to jump to 2018. there are a few people, I mean, circa 2018, actually, this is more probably like 2015. There were a few designers that GMT didn't work with that I really wanted to work with. And there were other designers, if we didn't work with them, there's probably a good reason. Honestly, I've talked before about, hey, if you think it's all about you, you're probably not going to fit very well at GMT. And so some of those guys, God bless them, I'm glad they make good games, but we're not going to bring anybody in that's going to blow up our teams. And so one of the guys on my list that I really, really wanted to work with was John Butterfield. I admired his games from afar. I loved his games for Victory. I thought Ambush was maybe the best game I'd ever played. And I know Eric did some of that too. Um, I thought his Battle of Britain game, RAF, is the best Battle of Britain game that's ever been done until maybe. I think Jerry White and Gina Willis got really close with Skies Over Britain that we did a couple years ago. But John's just this, generational talent. And he's another one of the guys like Mark Herman that's been around to see the hobby grow and develop. In my opinion, he is at the top of his design game now. He's not resting on laurels. He's not saying, here, just do my old game. He's creating new, really interesting products. But in 2015, he wasn't doing anything with GMT, and I really wished he would. But I would talk to him down at Tempe, where I go every year at the Consum Expo. And we would talk in passing. And one night I took him out to dinner and we just talked about, his games. And he's like, well, what would it look like if I did some designs for GMT? And so, it was kind of that just testing. One thing with a lot of these guys that have been in the hobby for 30 or 40 years, they've been treated poorly as often or more often than they've been treated well. So they want to know, how it's going to be. And sometimes they wouldn't ask me, they'd go ask another designer, who works with us. How is it to work with GMT? And I get that. It's all fine. But I'll just say that John and I just didn't jump into this all of a sudden. We kind of talked about it for a long time. And I really wanted to do World War II games with him. And he said, the problem is I have contracts. And so I wasn't about to get in the middle of that. We don't steal games from other companies. We don't try to poach designers from other companies. I said, I get it. I respect that. Finish your contracts. He goes, but my brother-in-law did a book about space, and I've been thinking about doing a space game. I'm like, huh. Just so happens we have like a growing group of space gamers at GMT, and maybe there's something there. He goes, well, it would be multiplayer or solitaire. He had me at or solitaire. Actually, he had me at John Butterfield. But and so, one day I think, at least for me, one of the moments I really remember is we're walking across the street on a crosswalk in Tempe, and he just looks over and he goes, well, if I did games for GMT, could you sell at least, and he named a number of copies. And it was, not a high number. And so I didn't dig on that, but I said, John, I could sell 4 times that number pretty much standing on my head because John Butterfield, you know? And so he was like, well, pretty soon we had a contract. And I wanted to make sure that he was passionate about whatever he was doing because that would make it good. And he was super passionate about SpaceCorp, and it shows. We've sold that out a couple of times, and we've got a ventures module for it, which really makes it fun. But I'm hopeful that we'll add tens of thousands of gamers out there that discover the game through digital play. Anyway, what's come out of SpaceCorp is John and I are good friends. And, this is a broken record probably, but that means the most to me. We haven't done it this year for the first year in a while, but we're both San Francisco Giants baseball fans. And so usually we'll go, once in the summer at least. I'll go up to the Bay Area, which is about a 4 hour drive for me, and we'll go to a Giants game. But in between we'll send each other texts or commiserate if they're not doing well, which is too often the case. But it's fun. You asked me to tell stories, so I will tell you a story from um, we were working on SpaceCorp, but also talking about doing some other games down the road. And so we go to a ball game, and his wife was there, my wife was there, and their son was with us. But John and I were sitting together, and I think I've never watched a ball game less than that particular game because we're just kind of having this conversation, as the game was going on. And I had told him that the day Mark Herman retired, Mark Herman was like a partner in a Booz Allen Hamilton. I mean, it was a huge defense contractor job. He retired and he called me that day and he said, Gene, I just want to let you know two things. One, I retired from Booz Allen Hamilton. And two, now I'm going to do games for you for the rest of my life. And I was like, I love hearing that. That's great. And so John and I are sitting here at the game and we're talking about potential future projects. And I'm trying to be really careful because I don't want to trample on the contracts he already has with other companies. I want to be really respectful of that. But I really also want him to do some games for us. And in the midst of this conversation, he leans over and he had a really great job at Facebook. And he leans over and says, I'm retiring next year. And he kind of grins. And I just looked over and I said, are you saying that I might get the same kind of call that I got from Mark Herman? And we both just laughed. And so, we're clearly doing other things together now. And but it all began with SpaceCorp. And, I'm really thankful for that show that John Kranz puts on in Tempe every year because it let John and I get to know each other as people and start to build a friendship really before we ever did any games together. I mean, mechanically pretty simple, packed a lot into not a huge decision space. And yet it's so rewarding and there's so much different stuff that can happen. The strategy, I don't know. I've played that game 30 or 40 times and I still don't really have an optimal strategy, which might mean I'm a bad player. I don't know, but I like that. And then when he added ventures, later, that took it and let you add basically different personalities, with the corporations.
Hmm.
And now it breaks the rules, it lets you break the rules in various ways. And that just brings a whole new, I think it makes it pretty much the perfect um, space exploration slash encounter kind of game.
Yeah.
Uh, anyway, I'm hugely happy that we did that. It was the big 2018 product that we did, and hopefully we're going to do games with John Butterfield. As long as there's John and GMT, because and probably he might need a break after we finish Away Team. I don't know. That kind of brings my ambush and my love for ambush and all these space gamers together in one big space odyssey. If
Wow.
it feels like playing continuous episodes of Star Trek to me, where you're like going down to the planet and exploring all these things, and just the craziest stuff happens. The
Yeah.
writer's done a great job. Um, I can't wait till everybody gets to see it. I think it's going to be one of the coolest products that we've ever done.
Ambush is such a classic, although it's funny when you play it now, you really see the Dungeons and Dragons influence. Like, oh my gosh, has it ever like I didn't realize it when I first played it back when I was a teenager or whatever, but now it's like, oh my gosh, like you can see the influence, you can see they're trying to capture that same flavor and translate it into a war game.
Yeah, a lot of those games show their age in various ways, or like type them to a period, as you say. The one that I love all the victory games, right? The one that I just don't think does is Pacific War. It just kind of stands alone. It was a innovative and amazing design at the time, and the new version we didn't really have to do a lot of there are new things in there, but we didn't have to say, oh, let's update this design. The design's awesome. I just saw somebody post online the other day that they just got, oh, maybe it was on one of the comments to one of the first videos of this, where they said, I just got into GMT games and war games, and my first game is Pacific War. And I thought, man, you're brave. But on the other hand, if you do what Mark always said, which is play these little engagements first, then it's not that big. But what most of us did, old war gamers, which is like, well, give me the campaign game, and then it's massive.